All right, welcome everybody, and sorry about the slight delay in the start in our webinar. So we're going to get right into it so that we don't lose more time. My name is Zubair Benaim, and I'm an Education USA advisor with the Islamabad office. Today's session is for everyone who's interested in learning about the GRE, specifically the quantitative section. A little bit about who we are before we start. Education USA is a global network under the U.S. Department of State, made up of over 425 international student advising centers in more than 175 countries. We are your official source to U.S. higher education. Education USA advisors work with advisees to provide updated, comprehensive, and unbiased information on higher education in the United States. In Pakistan, we are part of the USEFP, the United States Educational Foundation in Pakistan, which also houses the Fulbright Commission in the country. USCFP promotes mutual understanding between the people of the United States and people of Pakistan through educational and cultural exchange. We have offices in Islamabad, Lahore, and Karachi, but we're available for any student that needs support or advising throughout Pakistan virtually. Um, Now, before we move into this webinar, let me just tell the audience members that if you have any questions, you can use the Q&A box at the bottom to put in your questions. We do not unmute people in this session. So if you have any questions, you can put them down in the Q&A box. The presenter will get to your questions. Maybe Heather, it's up to you. How would you like to go about it? Would you like to answer questions maybe sometime in the middle, or would you like to keep questions at the end?
Let's see how it goes, but I don't mind that. First of all, I'd welcome everyone to this session, and I'd like it if everyone just also give a little bit of information like, hi, I'm Ahmed Raza, hi, I'm Esin Gulab, I study here, or what university you're going to. It would be nice just to put that down. You can ask a question as it comes to you, and I may or may not respond right away. I may respond in the middle, I may respond in the end.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Heather. And just a little bit more about this webinar, just so that people know what they're looking forward to. If you are interested in applying for the Fulbright scholarship, you may know that the GRE is mandatory. So all those applicants or all those prospective all those prospective Fulbright applicants in this webinar know that the GRE is mandatory to apply for the Fulbright scholarship. You need a minimum of 145 in each section in order to apply for the Fulbright scholarship. Other than that, if you're applying independently, if you're applying to graduate schools or PhD programs, then the GRE score will also help you out in that way. So this is going to be hopefully a very informative session. And with that, I'll hand it over to you, Heather. Thank you very much for taking out the time and being with us today.
Yes, so please give me sharing. Meanwhile, I will briefly introduce myself. So, hello everyone, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. I truly wish you all the best of luck in your upcoming preparations for the GRE. My background is that I'm basically been a teacher and learner my whole life since I was 15, and I have been associated with USEFP for a long time. I got the Fulbright in 2012, went to Harvard University in 2013 on the Fulbright. I did my master's in education there. And yeah, I think I work in an education edtech NGO, and I work with getting out of school children back in school. So that's Teach the World Foundation where I work. Um, I'm not sure about hand raising at the moment, but I think in the interests of time, I'm going to get started on the workshop. I would just like you to put your questions on the chat. All right. I don't think we open it up for audio. Okay. Zubair, are you still with me? Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Okay. So let's get started. This presentation is going to just briefly talk about the new GRE, which got updated actually some time back, but a lot of the material still is of the old GRE, and we can talk about that, and we can talk about the current format and what it's like, and then we'll dive into the quantitative section. I'm going to give you a little brief about what is kind of required, what the topics are, what the level of difficulty is. Then we'll go through the three types of questions, or four if you want to be more precise. And we're going to go through the answering tips and techniques. Welcome Talha from KPK, Masters in Peace and Conflict Studies. I encourage everyone just to write where you're from. I really love to get this, whatever little bit of connection that I can. People are raising their hands, but like I said, just put it as a question instead. Right. Okay. So the duration is it's 2 hours. It used to be um, guys who are raising your hands, instead of raising your hands, please type in the Q&A. And if there's any issue with seeing the slides, please let me know there. Okay. All right. Hi Haram. Hi Ayman. Welcome from Faisalabad and from Rawalpindi. This test is a 2 hours test. It used to be a 4 hours test. So it's much shorter now. And the fees is around the same that it used to be. It's $205. The scores are valid for 5 years, and you get to send the score of your test to 4 universities. And you should know beforehand, because you can't, I don't think you can pick later. You have to pick either at the time of application or at the time you do the test. So know which 4 universities there are. It could be two dream universities and two safety, or something along that line. For every additional university, you'd have to spend $25. You can do the test Monday to Thursday, anytime. You just have to book a slot at the USEFP. You have to bring valid and acceptable identification, which means passport. Okay, so you have to have a valid passport. Your NIC does not work for the GRE. So if you don't have your passport made, please apply to get your passport made right away, because it could take months these days in Pakistan to get a passport. And it must be an active and valid passport. Hi Ghazali from Karachi. Hi Sadia, also from Karachi. Hi Mohammed Tariq from FATA. Hi Salva from Karachi. Hi Ashfaq from KPK. Okay. You're not allowed to take anything in with you at the test, so make sure um, you aren't even allowed to take your own papers. They will give you paper to work with if you need paper. All right, and definitely your mobile phones and all get checked in. So you cannot take a mobile phone in, or a calculator, or anything like that. Um, the GRE is a standardized test. The thing about standardized tests is that they assess everyone on a level playing field. Okay, you can see here, everyone's here from, someone's here from Faisalabad, someone's from KPK, someone's from Karachi. You've all gone to different universities. I can see a lot of the universities you've gone to, and you can imagine the GRE is a worldwide test, right? So it's not easy to measure the GPA. Does a 3.6 from one university equal to a 3.6 from another university? The standardized test is such that it puts everybody on the same playing field, so we can objectively measure one person with the other. The history of intelligence testing and all, we don't have time for that, but really, you have to be able to pay attention. You have to be able to have comprehension, specifically reading comprehension, understanding the instructions. You have to know how to solve problems. You have to know how to think and do reasoning, specifically in quantitative numerical reasoning. But there might also be logic or other types of critical thinking to understand, okay, what exactly is being asked for. And spatial reasoning, which is basically your time and space, so distance and geometry and Cartesian plane. The new GRE is now got 121-minute section with only 12 questions. This section comes first. And then there's in the quantitative time. The very first section is an essay section, but the first quantitative section that you'll get will have 12 questions. And then you will get another quantitative section later on in the test, which will have 15 questions. And you can see there's a reasonable amount of time, far more than 1 minute per question, more than 1.5 minutes really in the first section, and also more than 1.5 minutes in the second section. So you're given a reasonable amount of time, and it's become much more a test of accuracy than anything else. Before it used to have stamina, because obviously a 4 hour test was quite a grueling endeavor, unless there's some doctors here who are used to doing 6 8 hours of testing. I don't know, but 4 hours was a lot. Now it's just a 2 hour test. You've got an essay for 30 minutes, and the rest of the 1.5 hours are divided equally between quantitative and verbal reasoning. So really it's a test of accuracy. Just want to say hello to some of the other people. There is a question that I will answer live. As far as I know, it is mandatory to have a passport. Zubair can reconfirm with you, but it has been mandatory to have a passport in the many years in the past, and they do not accept NIC. So if you go and you show them an NIC, it's not valid. There are whatever reasoning they have for that, but you gotta get your passport made. You can confirm that with Zubair, but I suggest getting the passport made, because if you're doing the GRE, you're only really doing it to go abroad. Otherwise, why are
Yes,
you doing
Heather,
it?
you are correct. The passport is mandatory.
Passport is mandatory. Thank you, Zubair. And also it makes sense, right? This is not a cheap test. So this is not अच्छा मैं test दे दूंगा then देख लेंगे कि score कैसा आया है. No, if you're gonna do this, then you have to really be very serious. You have to prepare for it seriously. You have to work in advance, and then you are going to plan to go abroad. So if you're spending this kind of money, $205, then know that you need a passport to go abroad. So it just makes sense. So apply today. I'll talk a little bit about how long it takes, but generally 3 to 5 months is a good amount of time to really actualize your potential and get a good score. 3 to 5 months of prep. So if you're planning on starting now, I suggest getting that. If you're in a situation, unfortunately, where you wanted to give the test sooner, you're gonna have to wait for your passport. Just want to welcome some of the other people who are here. Hi, got this, Salva, Ashfaq also. Hello, Subhan. Hello, Shaila. Hello, Salva. Uh, I can see a lot of concerns upon the passport. Listen, none of us are in charge of that. These are global rules, okay? So you just gotta work with what the rules are. Welcome, Omar. Welcome, Obashra. Now there is an option to test at home. I would recommend not to think about that, and because at home, if something happens, the internet goes down, the backup power goes down, there's a technical issue, um, or there's any kind of issue where they think that, oh, you're trying to cheat or something like that, you're just gonna get into a lot of problems. My personal recommendation, as your advisor right now, would be do the test in the testing center. I believe it's also cheaper. So I know you might have to travel to Karachi, Lahore, or Islamabad, but I would still advise you to test at the test center. It's the most straightforward way to make sure that nothing really goes wrong, that's your fault, and that there's somebody there. Okay. Now the test, because it's shorter, right? One of the things they've done is that they've accelerated the time. You get your score out of 370. So it's marked out of 170 in quant and 170 in verbal, and then it's marked out of 6 in your essay. So the score out of 340 is given to you right away, because it's computer generated test, and the computer marks it for you right then and there. But the essay scorer does have one human scorer, and so that test used to take a little, like 2 weeks or so, 2 3 weeks even, 10 15 working days, but now it comes a little faster. Generally, also because the test is smaller, you can imagine that each question carries more weight because there's fewer questions, so every question matters more. And there is one other very important thing. See this tree diagram. Now, depending, hello Sabahat, and hello to uh, anyone else who I may have missed. Hello Mubashra. In the section one, you might do really well, you might do excellent, you might do okay, you might do poorly. But depending on how you do in section one, it will adapt to you and give you a second section that is either difficult, average, or easy. Okay, so I always tell my students that if the GRE looks really difficult on the real day, like, oh my God, it's so difficult, what's going on? It actually means you're doing really well. So it's very important that in section one of quant, the one with 12 questions, you should aim to really get all correct or as many as possible, because it's going to place you in one of these three bands for the next section. And so if you did excellent, it's already going to give you a higher score than if you did okay and then did really well in section two, because section two, they didn't give you a difficult section, they gave you an average section. You see? And so you can see the difference between these two, that if you did really well in section one, but you did poorly in section two, you're still likely to score higher than somebody who just did okay in section one. All right? So that's something to keep in mind, that section one is in a way much more important to ace completely. So what is the quantitative reasoning trying to measure? Obviously in these two words, quantitative, which is in relationship to quantities, which you can think of as numbers, and your ability to reason. Your ability to say, hey, if A is greater than B and B is greater than C, then A is greater than C. That's reasoning. Okay, so you have to understand, interpret, and analyze this information. You have to solve the problems using some common mathematical models like arithmetic and subtraction and division and so on, and apply these basic skills and elementary concepts of these four sort of domains: arithmetic, algebra, geometry, and data analysis. Okay. The topics, I'm just going to give you a list of the topics that are there very broadly. So you do have exponents, you have roots, you have like square roots, you could even have a cube root, fractions, whole numbers. In algebra, of course, equations, inequalities, functions, other algebraic terms and expressions. And in geometry, you will have the principles of geometry, figures, shapes, that kind of thing. And in data analysis, you'll have some basic descriptive statistics, which includes interquartile range, median, mode, standard deviation, how to read a table, how to read a bar graph, some probability, permutations and combinations, and Venn diagrams or sets, really. So these are the topics, and the level of difficulty is like middle, really it's middle school. Okay, so think that back to sixth grade. So sixth grade, seventh grade, eighth grade, this is the really the, when I say the level of difficulty, I mean this is the when you learn the concepts that are going to be used. The only difference is that the reasoning that's involved is high level. So the concepts are simple. The concepts are from sixth grade, seventh grade, eighth grade, like area of a circle, right? Or Pythagoras theorem, or but the way that they'll ask it for you, like the way they'll compare one circle to another and the information they'll give, it'll require a lot of thinking, require a lot of reasoning. That thinking and high level thinking and reasoning, you mature over a long time, but the concepts are really basic. And it does not include higher level maths such as trigonometry, sine, cos, tan is there, calculus, differentiation, integration, linear algebra, matrices, inferential statistics, things like your ANOVA and uh, um, complicated variances and Z diagrams and all. Those will not be there, right? Hamza, you can book a session with advisors at USEFP to get more information. There is no last date. This test is available throughout the year, Monday to Thursday, which we discussed, right? But what you want to keep in mind is when university admissions generally open, generally university admissions happen in the period between December, Jan, and Feb at the most. And then the other thing you want to keep in mind is so I'm getting some questions which were already in the sides. It's $2 or $5, guys, and and let me continue. I should ignore these questions. There might be some dates like your scholarship applications, maybe you're applying for certain thing. So you have to keep in mind when those applications are, and you want to have a test before that. And then, it takes 3 to 5 months of preparation for the test. And then you also have to get your passport and plan your test date. So really, you want to have your GRE score comfortably before any of your applications are due. Okay. Now, going into the two sections, as I said, the first section is more important than the other because depending on your performance here, it will adapt and give you a different type of section on the second. Okay? And the second section is longer than the first. So the first one is broadly going to categorize you. Are you a high, medium, or low level test taker? And then it's going to, within that range, try to get you more clear on what exactly your point is. It's 130 to 170 and increments of 1 point. I just also want to say that at this point, I'm not going to take any more questions till the end because I'm getting a lot of questions which are going to distract from the meat of this workshop at the moment. There are 4 types of questions. There's a quantitative comparison, there's a multiple choice question, which has only one answer choice, and then there's an MCQ, which has more than one answer choice. So technically there are 4 different types, the third one being numeric entry, but really in these two, it's just a difference of knowing whether it's one or more, and it's clearly stated and given to you. So let's look at the first question. So now we've really already discussed the entry procedure and what the GRE is and what is the quantitative section, what's it about. Now we've gone into that part of the slides where we're going to talk about the types of questions, and I'm going to give you some samples of each. So the first one, I give you the instructions. Please have a read of this. Some information is given to you, and there are 2 columns, column A and column B. And every time the answer choices follow the same format. The format is, if you pick A, you're saying that column A is greater. If you pick B, you're saying column B is greater. If you pick C, you're saying both columns are equal. And if you're saying D, then what you're saying is the relationship cannot be determined from the information given. The relationship cannot be determined does not mean that I don't know the answer or an answer does not exist. Actually, what it means is that you got an indication that in some cases, quantity A is greater. In other cases, quantity B is greater, or they are equal. And since there's conflicting answers and the information provided does not specify, and you cannot say for certain whether it's A, B, or C, it could be A, it could be B, it could be C, depending on what value of X, for example, is taken, then you answer D. So you don't say D that like I don't know, or there is no answer. D means there are actually multiple answers, and therefore I cannot tell you which one is the true one. Here is an example of a quantitative comparison. So column A says 54% of 360 and column B says 150. This is a pretty basic question because column B just has an absolute value. So obviously anything greater than 150 it means that column A will be greater, and if column A has something less than 150 or equal to 150, it would be B and C respectively. Also, this is a straightforward numeric arithmetic question, 54% of 360. So let me just say that what is 50% of 360? Okay, or what is 50% of 300? 50% of 300 is half of 300, that's 150. 50% of 360, well, it'll be 150 plus 30, 180. Now already I know that if 50% of 360 is greater, it's 180, which is greater than 150, definitely it's column A. Now I could do it exactly, and I say 54 divided by 100, because percent means divided by 100, multiplied by 360, and I would get some answer, maybe like 192 or 188 or whatever I would get. But I know already that even 50% of 360 is greater than this. So I will mark A, and I will move on. Okay. Let me peep at the questions to see if there's any relevant questions. GRE score needed for Harvard University. You can find that out on the admissions page of different programs. And I'll speak to that at the end. Okay. Here's the second type of question. This is called an MCQ with a one answer choice. Now, whenever there's a one answer choice, the question also states which of the following. So, and the answer choices are given as these circles from A to E. So questions with one MCQ always have circles. So there's only one answer choice that is correct. Okay? Which of the following numbers is furthest from the number 1 on the number line? So if you make a number line, you'll go from -10, there's a 0 somewhere in the middle, and then there's a 10 at the end. And which one is furthest from the number 1? Well, in this type of question, you look at the most extreme answers. So you look at -10 and you look at 10, because you're looking for the furthest. So obviously it's not going to be some of the ones which are bunched up in the middle. It's going to be the most extreme. And you can see that -10 has 10 numbers between itself and 0 and the 1. So this has a lot more compared to just 10, which just has 9. So you would answer -10, one question, one answer choice. However, in certain cases, there are two answer choices. Okay, when there are two answer choices, it gives it or in this way that it says R. So you see the difference between R and is that is refers to a singular. But more important than that is that look how these answer choices are stated. They have these square blocks around them, whereas the previous question had these circles. Whenever you see these square blocks, it's in quantitative section, it means there's more than one answer. Okay, so you have to pick 2 or more answers to be correct. So the question asks, which of the following are multiples of 2 and 3? So multiples of 2 and 3 are all the even multiples of 3, because actually if you're a multiple of both 2 and 3, you're a multiple of 6, right? So what are the numbers here that are first multiples of 3? You can cut out A. Okay, you can include this one, all of these. Now you see which ones of these are even, because only the evens ones will be multiple of 2. So then you'll cut out this one, you've still got this one, you've got this one, you'll cut out this one, you've still got this one. So tell me, is 12 a multiple of both 2 and 3? Yes. Is 18 a multiple of both 2 and 3? Yes. Is 36 a multiple of both 2 and 3? Yes. So you will pick the answer C, D, and F. So that's the other type. So just to review, we've looked at 3 question types so far. We looked at a quantitative comparison, we looked at an MCQ one answer choice, and we've looked at an MCQ two answer choice. So I'm just giving you the format, the mechanics really of what type of questions you'll get. And the last one is called a numeric entry. Now in numeric entry, what it is there are no answer choices given. All that's given is a blank dash, and you have to enter the number. So you've got the question, one pen costs 0.25, one marker costs 0.35. All right, at those prices, what is the total cost of 18 pens and 100 markers? Let's just set that up. So if I have 18 pens and each pen costs 0.25, then the total cost of that is about, let's see, $18 divided by 4, so $4.5. Right? So for each dollar I can buy 4 pens. With $4 I can buy 16 pens, and then with 50 cents I can buy 2 more pens. So if I wanted to buy 18 pens, it would be 18 pens times the cost of each pen, which is $4.5. But I also want to know the cost of 100 markers. This one is actually simpler. So it's 100 multiplied by 0.35, and that will equal to 3.5 for 10 and 35 for 100 markers. Is that correct? Let's see. One marker is 3.35, 10 markers is 3.5, 100 markers is $35. So if I spend $35 on markers and $4.5 on pens, in total I'm spending $39.5. So your answer is 39.5. So you just type in 39.5. That's the answer. So these are now the 4 types of questions: quantitative comparison, MCQ one answer, MCQ multiple answers, and numeric entry. Okay, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about answer strategies, and then I'm going to tell you where to prepare, and then I'll take any questions that are left. So there's a lot of white sheep and there's one black sheep. So generally, if you have this is called process of elimination, right? If you have all these answers and one of the answers stands out, then pay attention to that answer, because if you have an MCQ one answer choice, you're looking for the one that is different from all the others, the correct one. Okay, so the first strategy is called process of elimination. Now, if I wanted to find 30% of 50, right? So I'm looking for 30 divided by 100, because that's what percent means, per every 100, multiplied by 50, right? So इसका आंसर आपको क्या लगता है? I can easily do 50 divided by 100, which becomes half. So the answer is 15. Okay, so that's how I did with a pure calculation. And I know this might sound a little strange, but 30% of 50 is the same as saying 50% of 30, right? And obviously, if it's 30% of a number like 50, it can't be greater than 50, can it? No. So it definitely can't be 80, and it definitely can't be 100. So you would just delete those. Also, it can't be 5, because 5 is too small. So really, there were only 2 answer choices that were really reasonable. Now, I know this is a very simple question, but in many questions, you will have answers which are tempting. But first, at least remove the answers which are clearly not the case. And that process is called the process of elimination. In fact, we did it very nicely in this question, where we marked this one wrong right away because, hey, it's not a multiple of 3. And then we crossed out the others because they're not multiples of 2. And so we solved this question using the process of elimination. Process of elimination can also, when we're stuck, when it's a difficult question, it can help narrow down our answer. So let's say I didn't know how to do this, but if I knew that, yeah, A, D, and E to ho hi nahi sakta, so even if I picked one randomly between B and C, I'd have a 50% chance of being correct. So process of elimination can help you in that manner as well. The second sort of strategy also with process of elimination is recognize the likely answer. Let's say I get a question like this. Now it's very easy for me to do this question, but suppose I couldn't do this question. What would I have done? So if I couldn't have done this question, I would have said, look, okay, let me use my reasoning skills. N is an integer and it cannot be an integer, right? So let me look for the most complicated one, because this could probably be an integer. I definitely know that there are numbers that could square root into an integer. This could be a fraction, but maybe if n is 1, this could also have been an integer. So which one, again with this one as well, it could, because of b, it could also be. But this over here, now this is very unlikely to be an integer, because it's got both a fraction here, just like question C and question A, but it's also got an under root like question B and question D. So this is the most complicated term and the least likely to become an integer, because of course when I square root a lot of numbers, that square root won't, unless they're a square number, they'll become some decimal, right? And then if it's all already in a fractional form, then it'll be really difficult to convert this number into an integer. So even without doing a lot of work, a lot of plugging in, I can pick the answer E here because I recognize that it's the likely answer. So without giving you a full explanation and without doing it, uh, now by the way, once you pick it, also you can pick numbers. If n was 1, it would be 1 upon 3. If n was minus some number, it just won't work out to be an integer. Okay, I'm not going to go into full of it. Also, I hate using this mouse thing, but that is the answer. And so there is this process also that you can use of elimination to be able to recognize what is likely going to be the answer. There is another strategy which is called back solving. When you do back solving, let's say I get this question. X is an integer, 2 is the remainder when 3x plus 4 is divided by 5. And now let's say I get confused. I'm like, I don't know what to do here. I understand remainders, I understand integers, but now there's an x here as well, and it's a compound, it's an expression of some kind with multiple terms, and it's dividing by 5. What do I do? So in the back solving, what you do is, rather than solve it, I call it the bulldozer style. I just solve and then I look at the answers. But instead, I could look at the answer and plug it in. I could say, okay, what happens when x is equal to 3? So when x is equal to 3, this will become 9 plus 4, 9 plus 4, 13. When 13 is divided by 5, it'll be 13 divided by 5. So 10 goes cleanly, and I'll left with a remainder of 3. But I'm not looking for a remainder of 3. I'm looking for a remainder of 2. Okay, so if I go with 4, I'll get 12 plus 4, 18. 18 again when divided by 5 will give me, 4 into 3, 12 plus 4, 16. 16 divided by 5 will give me a remainder of 1. If I go with 5, then obviously since it's a multiple, give me a remainder of 4. 19 बन जाएगा. 19 divided by 5 will give me a remainder of 4. So remainder आप तभी बात करते हैं when you're not converting it into decimals and fractions. So you're seeing what the whole number is, and then you're seeing what is left over. If I look at 6, 6 is probably going to give me the answer. 6 into 3 is 18. 18 plus 4 is 22. So if I do 22 divided by 5, my answer will be equal to 4, 2 upon 5. And 2 upon 5 means the remainder is 2. Okay, and so 6 is my answer. Now the way that I did it was that I used the back solving strategy. Okay, so we're just going over through some strategies. The third one is plugging in. So this is the one that's most commonly used as an answer strategy. So you just choose a number, okay, and there are some very interesting numbers. You shouldn't try to pick any random number like 17. You should pick a small positive number, a small negative number, a small fraction. So you want to probably stick to numbers like -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, and maybe half or minus half. There's a small set of numbers that you're likely to plug in. Sometimes you might want to plug in an extreme value. You say, what happens if I plug in 100? But there's generally a small set of numbers that I use for plugging in. Over here, since I don't have any other information, let me see what happens when I plug in 0. When I plug in 0, this will be 0 and this will be 0 because they're multiplying by 0. If I plug in 1, this will become 2 and this will become 3. So when I plugged in 1, b was greater. When I plugged in 0, they were equal. So already I can see that the relation probably cannot be determined. Let me go with another number, -1. If I pick -1, this would become -2 and this would become 3. Well, that's fine. But if I pick, what happens if I pick a number like 3, for example? If I pick 3, 3 cube is 3, 9, 27. 27 into 2, 54. And over here it would be 3 square 9. 9 into 3, 9, 18, 27. So you can see in this case, my A is greater. So since I'm getting different answers, sometimes they're equal, sometimes B is greater, sometimes A is greater. Really, actually, the moment that I have two conflicting answers, I can pick D. So that gives you the third strategy. The first one is process of elimination. In process of elimination, you can use logic, thinking. You can also start picking what you recognize as the most likely answer. The next strategy was back solving, where you take the answer and you plug it into the question. And the third strategy was directly picking numbers and plugging them in. All right. So I was in a real rush because we started late. So it will give us some time for questions. Also, I modified my slides, removed a lot of stuff for it to finish in 1 hour. In general, always make sure to read the question and make sure to answer exactly what is asked. If you give only one answer when they were looking for multiple answer choices, you'd be wrong, right? Similarly, if they are asking how many parts grape juice to orange juice, and you give them the parts orange to grape, that's wrong. So make sure to answer exactly what is asked. Note whether it's a one answer choice or multiple answer choice or plugging in exactly what is being asked specifically. And also note whether you're asked to round off. Sometimes in numeric entry, you're asked to round off. So, for example, that question with the pens, if you were asked to round off 39.5 and it said to the nearest dollar, then it would have been $40, right? So make sure that any such things like that, because you can do all the work and still get it wrong. And there's no partial marking. You will either get it 100% correct or you get it completely wrong. There's no like, oh, I did the working, but I was so close to the answer. No. I didn't round off, otherwise I had the answer. No. You're either correct or you're incorrect. And the way to check is whenever you pick an answer, you should always examine to see, okay, I picked this answer, but is it reasonable? So, for example, if somebody answered 30% of 50 is 30, I'd say that's not reasonable because 30% of 100 is 30, right? So, how can 30% of 50, which is half of 100, also be equal to 30? So, in case you had answered that, you should just double check, was I being reasonable when I picked my answer? Other thing in GRE is that it's not really a computational test. Okay, means that if you can give me the answer, it doesn't matter if you compute it or not. So this answer over here, the answer is E. It doesn't matter how much working I do or whether I'm 100% sure when I wrote it or 90% sure. At the end, if it is the correct answer, it's the correct answer. So try to avoid doing computation. And also, often a lot of times the answer is given in such a way that it's not given in the computed way. So the answer could be given in terms of pi or in terms of some other variable, but you ended up solving it for the exact. So for example, there's what is the sum of a sequence, right? And you say, well, the sum of the sequence is 5050, but none of the answers are like that. The answers are just given in the way where the terms are there, first term, last term, and you didn't actually have to solve it. So the GRE doesn't really like you to solve it. It likes it when you simplify and when you match the answer to the way the answer choices are given. Okay, sometimes it happens with under roots. So the answer could be 5 under root 2. You don't need to solve what the under root is. So just as you practice, you'll get a feel of that. Okay, you don't actually have to solve as many times and you are able to find the answer and match it. I'm really against using calculator. I think it's a waste of time, but you have to learn how to do the mental math and to do shorthand mathematics. The reason is because when you're doing the calculator, one, it's time consuming. Two, you often stop thinking about the question and think instead about how do I use this online calculator. You don't really get to take your own calculators inside. So you have the calculator, which is an online function in the test. So you press the button and it pops out. I highly advise that as you do your quantitative practice, do it without using the calculator. At most, it may be necessary out of, like, let's say 12 and 15 out of every 30 questions. There may be one question where really a calculator is required. This one is a little hard to explain, but it may be efficient to determine least or greatest possible value. So if you go to that number line question that I had asked, right, it would not make sense for you to look at B, C, and D. Just look at the two extreme values because it's looking for the furthest. And the furthest is always going to be either really positive or really negative, but it's not going to be somewhere in the middle. So it's not efficient to look at answers B, C, and D. Okay, but there are other questions like that where this really does come in handy. You're asked to determine the range of a deviation, and you have some formula, and you have to do back solving. Now, if you have to do the back solving like we did here, rather than plug all of this in, you would just look at, okay, what happens with 3 and what happens with 7. Okay, other techniques are you can skip ahead within a section. There's no harm in doing so. It's only going to adapt after the section ends. They also have a review and check button. So you click the review button, finish the rest of the test. It'll show you which questions you have to go back and review. But when you do that, I don't suggest leaving it blank. I do say just make a choice, make a guess if you have to, and then go back afterwards, right? And if one question, like say question number 9, and you've been on question number 9 for 5 minutes, what's going to happen to the rest of the questions? So also know when to cut your losses and move forward, because you don't want to get on a quicksand that it is solvable, but it'll take you 5-6 minutes to solve the rest of the test. Then come, don't spend too much time in the first go. It could be a trap just trying to kill your time. Other strategies is, while you're reading the question, read it actively, try to sort, analyze data, note down the data as soon as you. So if I have 4 lines of data, the first half line, I will note it down as soon as I get it. And then I will try to anticipate the question's answer as I'm working. Other things, this is for before the test. It's also a bit of psychological game. If you're healthy, you'll test better. So make sure that you're healthy, your diet is good, your exercise is good, you're sleeping well, and don't try to take those snacks which are going to be spike your sugar too much. Take things like fruit and juice, and practice every day, but don't practice the day before the test. So the day before the test, take it easy and try not to stress. Okay, where to prepare? There is it's an old website. It's got a clunky UI, but if you feel that you're weak at math, this is a website, mathisfun.com. You can review from there. Otherwise, every book has a math review section as well. You have to register yourself. I suggest the first thing you should do is, if you're new to this, is go to ets.org.gre and register yourself and look through the prep material that they give. They also give a free power prep software. USEFP also offers a mock test that you can do with them, which simulates what it might be like on real day. If you really want to do exceptionally well and go for a killer score like mine, which was, what was it? Mine was in the old one, so it was, I think, 1560 out of 1600, with a 790 out of 800 in verbal, and something like that. Anyways, very high score. If you want to go for a very high score, you should practice about 3 workbooks in total. Okay? So I would say take one from ETS, take one from Kaplan, and take one from Princeton. And then there are books which are all in one. So they're like, हम सारा कुछ एक ही book में कर रहे हैं, but end में उसमें सवाल बहुत कम होते हैं. So इस तरह की books, maybe 2 or 3 is fine. And then maybe a test book with just practice tests. Other than that, because you want to do something like 10 to 20 tests if you're really aiming for a high score. Then you should also have a vocabulary book, and you should be learning words. You should read from Al daily every day for your English. I'm going into English a little bit, but read daily and do your vocabulary daily. That's how your verbal score goes up. And then for math, it's like you have to review your concepts, and then you have to do a bunch of practice. And that's it. Let me now look at the Q&A. GRE score needed for Harvard. It depends from different programs have a different average GRE score. But GRE score, think of it as a prerequisite. So after you get your score, it's really the rest of your application, your essay, your motivation that really will determine. But there is sometimes a baseline prereq, like Zubair mentioned that without a 290 you can't apply for the Fulbright. But a competitive score will be above 310. Just to give you an example, I'm working with the MIT Masters in Business Analytics on something, and their average GRE quant score is 166. And that program is harder to get into than a Harvard MBA. Okay. If the test adapts, the one who gets easier will score more. No, if the test when the after section 1, if you do really badly in section 1, it'll give you an easy section 2 and you will end up scoring less. If you do very well in section 1, you'll get a harder section 2, and overall you will be scoring higher. Method of book USEFP test, that's for Zubair. Call them, email them and ask. uh, is a personal statement and SOP the same thing? More or less, yes. 310 plus, including analytical writing assessment. Analytical writing assessment is minimum, you should think of 4 out of 6. It's marked separately. How can we register for any course offered by USEFP? You guys should all get together and petition them. They haven't been offering classes since the last year for whatever reasons. You should say we want classes. They're not offering classes right now. There is 7 years, or does it make hurdles in my study in US? Not really. Depends if you talk about what you did during those 7 years and you were doing good stuff, so that's fine. Could you provide details on the upcoming mock GRE? It's a one person, an individual can apply for a mock GRE. It's not like they're giving you the whole center. You won't test in the center where everyone does the test. From what I remember, when I did the mock, you're given taken to a separate room and you book it separately, and it's a mock environment. It's not a real environment. It's simulated to be similar to the real environment, and so you get that whole protocol of going into the center, checking in your stuff, signing in, putting things in the locker, walking in, getting on the computer, and doing a test on the computer. But it's not the actual center where the real test takers are taking. You will not be in that room. You'll be in a separate room. And it's not a group thing. It's an individual thing. You have to request it individually, and they'll let you know if they can accommodate. Please tell the total marks. How much marks should a candidate get minimum? It depends on your program, but I think it really depends what you consider good score. Are you going for Ivy League? Are you going for Fulbright? Are you going for a top 100 or a top 20 or a top 300? So, but generally, I found that, and I've been teaching the new GRE recently. I have a student, so the test has become a little bit easier. Before we used to say our minimum score above 300, but now I would say you should aim to at least be above 310 to be competitive. So that if you're a 6 semester student, uh, wait till your graduation or close to graduation. But yeah, you cannot go for Fulbright as a 6 semester student. You can use instance this. So if you pass the institute but doesn't perform well with that, I don't completely understand. Uh, okay, I'll answer that question, Ghazali. So there's a GRE general test and there's a GRE subject test. The GRE subject test, for example, GRE psychology test or GRE physics or something like that. I've done the GRE psychology. I can't speak to the other ones. Um, so generally, you have to give your tests before your scholarship and applications, but there are two different tests, and the general test works for pretty much everything, whereas the subject test is only usually for PhD candidates, and it's in addition to the general test. It's very niche. Um, Talha, search for YouTube yourself. So, guys, don't try to ask us things that you can do yourself. Of course, there'll be tons of material on YouTube in Urdu and Hindi. Just search GRE Urdu, GRE Hindi. You'll find some material. ठीक है? Recommended books for, I've answered that. Kaplan and Princeton and ETS is what I prefer. Then people do other things like Magoosh and all. There is a real shortage of new books right now in the market. Also, the test takers themselves haven't made new books. Like Kaplan's last book was in 2018. Method of booking, you have to go to ETS. Here, register yourself at ets.org.gre. This is where you'll book the real test. And for mock tests, you can email the center at their public info@USEFP or whatever. Uh, email testing at usefp.org for the mock test. Okay. All right. I think I've gotten, uh, yes. Some of these are more counseling questions, not GRE questions or GRE con question. Osama, every university offers its own, and there's a lot others. There is a group on Facebook called Scholarship Network, and if you want to know more about scholarships, join that group on Facebook. I think I'm going to call it. We are 4 minutes over time. Thank you, everyone, for being with me. It was a pleasure. Sorry, there are a few more questions. TOEFL or GRE or TOEFL after selection. You can do TOEFL after you're selected for the Fulbright, I believe. If you're aiming through, do we need to take general subject? Listen, the subject test has to do with your university. The general test has to do with the Fulbright. My degree is that I can apply because I don't want to waste a year. Osawa, there's no such thing as wasting a year. There's no such thing as wasting a year, guys. Time moves on regardless of what you do. ठीक है ना? If your degree is ending in Jan, I would suggest that you do your degree, get good grades, focus on that, then do the GRE and the Fulbright. It takes a lot of time to do well on the GRE and to apply for a Fulbright. It doesn't make a big difference as long as it's the last version of the test and not some book from 2000. Most of the questions are the same. You should be able to see what's in your book and what's the other. It doesn't make a big difference. So this is for registering for how many years? Omar, I think that would be fine if you have your score. Um, uh, it gives you a provisional score, so yeah. But I don't know why you would be in such a situation where literally for 10 days difference. Student F1. Fulbright gives you a J1 visa. Okay, how difficult it is, dude. Ghazali, it depends on you. How difficult it is. I'm teaching a student right now. Their baseline score is 300. So how difficult is it for them to? They did it the first time they did the test. They got a 300. So it depends on you how difficult you find it. But it's on honestly, I've told you level of difficulty is not that high. Tala, I've said I think it's 3 to 5 months preparation. बाकी तुम without preparation भी चले जाओ, कोई तुम्हें रोक नहीं रहा. Okay, that's it. Khuda Hafiz, everyone. Zubair, would you like to close up?
Yes, Heather, thank you very much for taking the time out. Your sessions are always very, very engaging as usual. We love having you on. Thank you very much. As for the rest of the audience members, if you have questions, I noticed that some of the questions were not regarding the GRE math, or sorry, the quant section. So if you would like to have those questions answered, you can email info@usefp.org. Just go on the USEFP website, and that email is mentioned there. Any Fulbright related questions regarding the statement of purpose or regarding any other things, all these questions which are not related to the GRE quant. Um, Again, you can just email info@usefp.org, and then your questions can get answered there. All right. Heather, thank you very much again. We really appreciate it. And I would like to wish everyone else a very good evening. All right. Take care, everyone. Allah Hafiz.
Khuda Hafiz.